Elevation Nation, as Parker always says, we have a special guest for you today, this morning, tonight, whenever you are listening to the Elevation Nation podcast. Danielle Farage is on with us live. We're going to be talking all about her story, how she is crushing work-life balance. We're going to talk a little bit about something she calls Danielleisms. We're going to get into mental fortitude. And then something that resonated with me, Danielle, that I really want to talk to you about is you kind of yelled at me a little bit the first time we spoke because I was talking about imposter syndrome and you said, Sam, you shouldn't call it that. So I want to get into that because what you told me was very enlightening. I'm so excited that we're all friends and on the podcast now. Danielle, welcome to Elevation Nation.
Thank you, Sam. I'm very excited to be here, getting over a cold. So my voice doesn't sound exactly how it usually sounds, but I think people will be able to navigate that challenge.
Danielle, I'm so excited that you're joining and you're going to crush it. I can't wait to listen to all your advice and wisdom. I was looking on your LinkedIn, as I do before every episode, and I'm like, future of work, influencer and speaker, community builder, neurodivergent thinker. I'm like, Danielle, I'm a people human resources consultant. We could talk about this stuff for days and
Wow.
days and days and days. Granted, Elevation Nation knows we only have our conversations for 45 minutes. So we don't have much time. So let's get right to it. We start every episode with an elevator pitch. We need to hear more about your background, Danielle.
All right. Sounds good. So yes, I am a top voice for Gen Z, a featured work influencer and speaker. I'm also a community builder. I love bringing people together. And really what it's about is helping people find the tools and knowledge in order to reach fulfillment. That's my why in life. I think everyone should have the opportunity to do that. And I really do dream of a world where everyone feels valued, supported, and fulfilled, not just at work, but beyond it. And I think that in the past few years, especially, we've realized that work is just as much a part of life as everything else in our lives. And work isn't life. So how can we obviously we've heard of work-life balance, but I think that a lot of it is also work-life integration. And we can talk about what that actually means. But focusing more on how can we find fulfillment in not just outside of work, but maybe inside of work and building relationships that matter to us and just thinking about our lives more holistically.
The reason why I love what you're doing, and I get to nerd out for a second because Parker, like he said, is full-time in people consulting. So you guys are going to have coffee chats after this, I can only imagine, and talk about your love for HR and people and the way of working. But one thing that really resonates with me is, and why I think, Danielle, we hit it off when we spoke, was it's a very similar mission to Elevation Nation and what Parker and I are trying to do. And it comes from, obviously, giving back to the community is great, and we want other people to feel good, don't get me wrong. But I would be lying to you if I said it did not come from needing it myself. When I graduated from University of Maryland with Parker, we got big boy jobs at big four consulting firms in New York, in DC, and was all right, we worked our entire lives to do this. Now what? And is it really this hard? And is it really this challenging? And is this what I worked my entire life for? And so that concept of wanting to bring fulfillment to other people is really what started Elevation Nation. Was I didn't have fulfillment myself and Parker didn't either. And we were we got to figure this thing out. And so I'm glad that other people have a similar mission. And for, some young people that are out there listening, it's okay to feel that way. It's normal to feel that way, a little bit lost. Don't look at myself, Parker, and Danielle as having all the answers. Look at us as a source of inspiration for how you can work towards a little bit more fulfillment. And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today.
Amen.
Danielle, did you always think that you would become a top 50 voice on LinkedIn? Like, was that always the plan? You go to high school, top 50 voice on LinkedIn. Go to college, I'm going to be a top 50 voice on LinkedIn. Like, what was that like? You know, what was the journey going to be for you? How'd you end up in this position?
So my middle name is actually LinkedIn. Funny enough, I was born to be a top voice now. My journey, I think, started for me when I was in college. I went to USC. I was studying psychology, and I actually, funny enough, what you said, Sam, was like exactly what I saw my siblings go through. Was like they got these big jobs and they hated their jobs. They hated their lives because they hated their jobs. And I, as the third kid, obviously, it's my job to watch my siblings make mistakes and do the opposite. So that's what I did. I started from a place of, what's my why? Like, what do I want to be doing and contributing to this world? And I saw the major problem that existed was that these organizations were treating people like cogs in a wheel. And instead of actually learning about them and adapting the culture to the people, and instead it was like, you know, trying to fit everyone into a perfect little box. Think of like your interview processes at your Big Four consulting jobs. Like, I remember my sister studying for literally months to like show up and just be a McKinsey, you know, contestant. Like, I just didn't feel like that was natural or organic and or was aligned with like who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. So I'd say that, first of all, is just like realizing that it's okay to want different things, and it's okay to like look around in a room and be like, oh, like everyone else is sort of doing, you know, studying something because their parents wanted them to, or because their sister's a doctor, or because they, you know, work at Oracle, but like realistically you can do something different. And so I think that's where it started. In terms of LinkedIn specifically, like what happened was I was trying super desperately not to end up in a toxic job, because I'd seen like, you know, what happens when you do. And in 2020, I started an internship, and then the pandemic happened and it went remote, and it was a toxic environment. And when I say toxic, that like can look like a lot of different things, but like my boss literally told me my time is more valuable than yours, and you're entitled because you went to USC, and like just asked me to stay on, you know, longer after our like team meetings, just to kind of like criticize me, and not in a helpful way. So when she started to like, you know, attack my character, I knew that it was toxic, and I quit that job. And pretty much 3 weeks later, I landed a job at a great startup where like my employer like was like aligned with their values, like diversity and inclusion. Like my manager actually cared about my growth, which was great. And I realized that when I was going through that toxic experience, it was probably the loneliest, most depressed shell of a human being sort of experience that I had ever gone through. And at the same time, like I had tried so desperately to avoid that. And it just showed me how vulnerable we can be when we're just coming out of work. Like we have nothing to compare it to. And so I wanted to make it my mission to help other people really understand, like, okay, here are some signs of a toxic job, or, you know, some green flags to look for. And pretty soon I started sharing that on LinkedIn, and that's how I started.
Just through blog posts, right? Like your write-ups?
Through like literal, just like LinkedIn posts, and also through Clubhouse.
Interesting.
When it was like a thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's, to your point, and thank you for sharing that story with us. And again, resonates with a lot of what Parker and myself have gone through. You're exactly right. When we graduate from school, and listen, I love University of Maryland, so does Parker. USC, fight on. Like, I'm sure we can say great things about our schools. I think all public universities and private institutions miss the mark on preparing you to be a working member of society. And the reason why I say that is we learn a lot of these skills, and that's fantastic. But to your point, Danielle, we don't know when we're being taken advantage of, or there's I remember specifically going through and people being like, you're low man on the totem pole, Panitch, like, time to cut your teeth. Like, it's going to be hard. You're going to have to grind. And I'm like, I can grind. Like, I know how to work hard. I'm going to prove to myself I can do this. So, like, there's a very big difference between grinding and working hard and putting up with a toxic environment or getting abused verbally or like whatever it is. But it's hard to navigate that when you've never experienced it before. So it's crazy. Spot on. I'm glad you're doing that.
Especially as a young adult. I mean, you live your entire life, right? You go from childhood to, you get away a little bit from your parents in middle school, then you get into high school, and then you become independent. Podcast, I got my people listening, I got my fingers, I'm doing, little
air
quotes,
quotes.
Air quotes, like independent in college, and you then graduate, and you've been living in this GPS your entire life. Your life has been essentially routed, and you have people to help you along the way, people to support you, and then you get thrown into it, right into the job. And I think there's this added element of pressure that young adults put on themselves because they want to make their mark on the world. They've been focusing the last 22 years of their life to get to that point. And there's so much pressure that, to your point, Sam, I got to grind. I got to go hard. I got to work to make my impact, make myself known within the workplace. But with that comes the other side that you may not even look at. Like, wow, I can actually have a life and work. Like, Sam, you remember first year, oh my God, life was work. That's all we thought about on the weekends. Went to bed on a Monday morning. I woke up, I'd call you and be like, dude, why am I dreaming about work when I have work tomorrow? Like that, everything I thought about, the nervousness that comes from meetings, how I felt like, and I think it's just a challenge that young people go through because we've never been there before. And I don't know, is there a way to teach it without experiencing it? I don't know.
I think there's generally two camps, right? And I've got into like Twitter wars with people actually over this because there's some really opinionated people in the camp of like, that's exactly what you should do. Like pedal to the metal, like live at the office, like die hard, like you should be putting 150, 200% of yourself into work and staying up all night and all this stuff. Okay, great. You do that for 2 years and then what? Like for what purpose? Like to hit the next level of management? Like I didn't understand that. And so then the other camp is which I more identify with. And from my Instagram, from my LinkedIn, you'll learn this about me. If you go there is like, we're young. Like we're never going to experience our 20s again. And while you're in your 20s, a lot of people will tell you that's the time to experiment. That's the time to do a bunch of different things so that you can learn what you like, learn what you don't like, and like obviously try to contribute and try to be, a valuable asset and member of society and all of that. But at the same time, like that is what your 20s are for. And to put so much pressure on ourselves, like even from freaking, 10th grade when we start thinking about schools, we don't necessarily think about it from a holistic standpoint. We think about it from a standpoint of what's the most prestigious school I could go to and then try to go there. And only the smart students and the smart parents will try to guide their kids, and this is what education should be doing, into the direction of what are you naturally good at? And based on that, as well as what you're interested in, what potential career paths or skills could you learn? And then where could you go to school to learn those skills? And so I think we have education completely backwards. And I think we're learning that as more people start to opt out of college and be like, well, YouTube University for the win.
Times are changing, like whether you want them to change or not. times are changing. And I think I was talking to my mom about this the other day. It's like, Mom, there are so many ways to make money now. There are so many ways to have a career. And I think what's very difficult for a lot of young people to wrap their heads around is we see, I'm going to use this term loosely, but influencers, right, are mostly the people we see making money in a more creative or different way, just because that's what we're exposed to. Where traditionally in real life, we're exposed to people probably making money the more traditional way, right? Our parents, our older siblings, our grandparents worked at a corporation. Maybe they started a company and were semi-entrepreneurial, but I highly doubt like my dad or mom were selling like Canva templates online as passive income, right? Like that just wasn't happening then. And so we now have this vision of a right side of our brain being in real life, things we're exposed to, real people we know, as like realistic jobs that have happened in the past. And then we see this other camp of like influencers and people who are striving to be like, but feel kind of out of reach because we don't know them, making money in this whole new way. And I think it's going to cause a really interesting diversion between people who follow in a traditional path and people like yourself, Danielle, who are like, I'm doing things a little bit differently. And it's exciting. It's cool, but kind of interesting stuff going on in the world of working.
I mean, here we go. We're nerding out right now.
We really are. Sorry.
I've done some research on this topic, this idea that we're talking about, that people, Gen Z, younger, millennial, and as time goes on, more people are feeling less inclined that they're getting the ROI on college. Post-college, they maybe go to a university, they study, and then they're either not using what they study in their job, or what they studied in their job is not something that they're like very interested in. And as a result of that, they're changing their career paths. And so there's this idea out there around the like that people should just specialize right off the bat out of high school, and just from there, like, learn what you need to learn. Let's say you're a coder, go to go through like an apprenticeship program and get trained up through an apprenticeship program that is paid for the company that's going to eventually hire you, and taking the cost of college out of your hands and putting it in your employer's hands. And you're getting a very unique skill to get you there. We're trying to think about how that's going to happen in government. I think that's like a very, really ripe place for this to happen, where the government is struggling to hire talent, and more importantly, struggling to hire talent that is going to help redefine what the future looks like. And so it's a thing that I think is going to continue to build, and we're going to see in the news and on, in front of our lives, and maybe the colleges will adapt. But right now I'm with you both. Like, it's broken.
Yeah. And actually, it's so funny you mentioned the whole university thing, because I was at a conference put on by ISG. They're like a consulting firm. And one of the speakers was from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. And they, right before the pandemic, they bought an entire campus, like a lot of square feet, for a new office in Tennessee. What they ended up doing, instead of making it into like just any campus, they made it into a university. And their first graduating class is graduating next year. And they have, it's like 3 to 4 year university. And it's literally like Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't remember what they called it, but it's for the purpose of, obviously you don't have to go work at Blue Cross, but they're funding your education, so you're probably going to like them.
And they're funding it, and then you're learning key skills that are critical in that industry and critical for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And you're probably doing work for Blue Cross Blue Shield while you're getting your education. 100%. It's a win-win. And oh my God, we could keep going. Talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, to be able to provide opportunities for people to get into a company like Blue Cross Blue Shield, who might not necessarily get that opportunity if they went to a university.
like hypothetically speaking, think about the talent pool that comes from a university. The Googles of the world are hiring from the Ivies. And if you're not in an Ivy, you're not working at Google.
Yeah. And word on the street, this isn't confirmed, but I heard it the other day. I was literally walking on the street and someone was like, you know, I hired some like MBA from Harvard and they didn't do shit. All I want is like some high school kid who just got out of school and is like looking to grind and make money and like do good work. They'd probably be a lot better. And I'm like, that's so true. And I literally heard that like on the street, someone was saying it, and it's true. And I agree with Parker. Like it's a trend that will only continue to grow, especially with like, you know, these university type things like Salesforce University, like Microsoft invested maybe like $1 billion or something a couple of years ago in upskilling. So you're going to hear a lot more about this kind of stuff, but I think for probably like this audience, just like being aware that this stuff is happening, that these opportunities are coming out there, and like I'll certainly try to post about them as much as I can, as much as like I know of, but like, geez, like there is so much opportunity, and like Sam said, like there's so many ways to make money. It's ridiculous.
It really is. And I think for all the young people out there that are listening, that if you can take any takeaway from this, right? There's lots of opportunities, places are buying campuses, cool, like awesome. You're going to hear about that in the news. Danielle's going to post about it for us. We'll post about it. I would say the big thing that is in your control, that is in your hands right now as a high school student or a college student, is figuring out you. And I want to break that down for a minute because I think that's something that we haven't talked about yet, but is extremely important and ties perfectly into your life and your career and your job and your education. And so at Elevation Nation, we have a concept called mental fortitude. And we believe that that is the skill that these colleges and universities are not teaching as well as they probably should, which is good for us because we can teach it now to everybody. And so I'll break down mental fortitude. It's got 3 parts. Self-awareness, so myself, knowing who you are, my vision, knowing where you want to go, and then accountability. How are you actually going to get there? What are the steps you're going to take to do something? And so breaking that down, first part, myself, all of Elevation Nation that's out there listening, you're hearing all these trends that are happening. You know, Parker and Danielle both said, find something that you're really good at and you can maybe specialize in that. Take a step back. You're young adults in college, in high school. Think about 1, what you are good at, and 2, what you enjoy and brings you fulfillment, and try to break that down a little bit. I think the earlier and more consistently you get in the habit of figuring that out, the better you're going to be in the long run. And the cool part about self-awareness and mental fortitude is it doesn't just stop. You don't do this once. I did this last week when I was having a quarter-life crisis. Again, shocker, of like, what am I doing with my life? What the hell is going on? I went and I sat down and I was like, all right, what am I good at? What do I hate? What do I want to do with my life? And so once you start to develop those skills of being a little bit more introspective, I promise you, you will reap the benefits. So that's my lecture for the day.
I'm going to add having the framework of mental fortitude, having mental fortitude, being self-aware, having a vision, and holding yourself accountable is the thing that you can revert to when times are difficult. It's the thing that you can revert to when things are going really, really well. It's that grounding thing. I mean, fortitude in itself is courage in the face of adversity, right? But we think about mental fortitude as, okay, I know who I am. And because I know who I am, I know where I want to go. And because I know where I want to go, I know how to get there. And if you know those things, you can kind of put on some blinders. If things get tough, you still know those things. That's the thing. Mental fortitude is going to get you through those things. When things are going really well and you're like, damn, like what's the next thing I got to do? Because that always happens. We always get to an achievement. We're like, oh, we're celebrating. And then what's next? We're like, damn. Mental fortitude brings us back. But Danielle, I'm curious, what do you think about mental fortitude and the way we've broken it down?
You know, I think it's really smart. Funny enough, just posted about this yesterday because I am also going through a quarter life crisis. And I think one of the things is just like talking about it, like being open about the fact that you don't have it all figured out. Like that was one of the things that I, reflected on, is like people want to be a part of your journey. And in my life personally, like one of the things that I think was a mistake that I don't regret, but just moving forward, I was so much more aware of, was I was treating my personal relationships different from my professional relationships. And that even extended to my professors. So, for example, I would become friends with, let's say, or meet an acquaintance through work. And then I would maybe refrain from like texting them, right? Because, like maybe they don't like text, maybe like email's more appropriate. Maybe they don't have time to respond to me because I'm just like this 24-year-old whoever, right? But if there's a relationship, if there's a connection there, and you're holding back from being your most authentic self, that'll hurt the relationship. And it was about I say a year and a half ago when I realized like I was befriending the angel investors of the company I work at, Cafe, and I was becoming like they were texting me like that. I had that relationship, and I realized like, oh my God, like when I start to pour into these relationships like I would any type of friendship, they flourish. And I think that was the biggest part. And I think where it relates to mental fortitude is like not being afraid to share the journey and the struggles and the ups and downs that you're going through with the people that you have relationships with who are invested in you, because they're invested in you, because they want to be there for you. And if you can like treat those like friendorships, I love to say that, friendors are people in your life who maybe they started as a friend and maybe you speak a lot about your professional stuff and like the real shit going on behind closed doors. Maybe it's a professional connection that became a friend and who's older, or maybe they're younger and they could provide some sort of knowledge or valuable something to you that you wouldn't otherwise get. And so I like to think of, most of my connections these days as friendors. I like to show up as my authentic self. And I think that's a huge part of like mental fortitude, how you define it, is because like it's really about, once you trust yourself, then trusting your ability to show up in the ways that you commit to, and to show up and to stay authentic and to communicate what your goals are, because who knows who you could cross paths with.
That's such a good point. Like, Sam knows this, that sometimes I get in my head and I feel like I got to act a certain way at work, whether it's presenting or, we're doing Sam remembers the beginning of our podcast, even like trying to be someone that I'm not. But to your point about being authentic, like I think people just in general are at their best when they're able to feel like they're in an environment where they can be authentic. And the companies, if we're talking about work, the ones that are going to win in the long term are creating that environment where everyone can be themselves, because then they're bringing their best selves to work. They're able to think more broadly about certain topics or problems or whatever it is, because they feel comfortable. And maybe not comfortable is the right word, but they feel like they have a place where they can connect with others without, putting that guard up to limit that type of thinking and thoughts and whatnot. Sam, I know you think about this all the time. I know you bring yourself authentic to work every day. You don't give a shit about what anyone thinks.
I mean, I didn't always used to be like that.
That's true.
I think that
learned.
It takes some time to be confident. And I mean, I've been at the same job since I graduated college. And so that comfort level of being my authentic self took some time. if I was at a new job tomorrow, I probably wouldn't be as open and honest as I am now. But I think at the end of the day, Danielle, like so beautifully said, one of the main things that resonated with me is something that I used to tell a lot of the young high school and college kids that would call Parker and I and do coaching sessions with us on how to get an internship or job. And I used to say this piece of advice if they were over 21. I used to say, at the end of the day, there is a human being that you're going to be working for, that's going to be hiring you, that you're going to have to spend your time with. They also have a life outside of work. And they, after a hard day, want to grab a beer with someone that doesn't annoy the shit out of them, that they like talking to, that they enjoy learning with and growing with and mentoring. Be that person. And I think oftentimes we have a lot of young people that come into the professional world and they can't be their authentic selves because they are enamored, because this isn't taught in school, by this concept of professionalism. And so Danielle was explaining how she had these texting relationships with these people and she was turning them into mentorships and friendships. And that's not Danielle saying she wasn't being professional at all. It's Danielle navigating human beings to figure out where their level of professionalism is and how they like to communicate, mentor, and grow. And so I would challenge a lot of the young people out there, whether you're still in college, in high school, whether it's talking to teachers, at an internship, at a summer job. I worked at a mini golf course and I learned business from the guys that own the mini golf course. Like, find these mentors in your life, be that person that you want to have a beer with at the end of the day, because these are human beings that are hiring and working with you. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I'll say some of the ways, to be specific, of how I fostered those relationships while still being professional, but just being more of myself. One example is just like finding commonalities, right? So whether it's your professor, asking them, going to office hours or just after class, like, oh, hey, what are you up to this weekend? Like, I'm going to this interesting event on campus. Like, have you gone to this before? If it's a professional connection, like, oh, what conferences are you attending this year? What are you learning about right now? Trying to figure out like where the commonalities actually exist. And trying to focus on shared and mutual interests, which is actually something that, like, through work, we're working on a product that literally helps to map interests across an organization. Parker, you and I would definitely geek out on this.
I love it.
And then you can like create events like me and you like could literally come up with an event based on the fact that we both like yoga, and like do it internally and then maybe get funding from, our bosses. But anyway, it's cool because it's like the stuff that you maybe think is professional or the stuff that you think is like non-professional. I just don't think that professionalism actually helps us in the modern day to be our full selves at work. I think there is a certain level of professionalism, like how we dress should be, a certain way, like, to be like respectful of the fact that maybe I'm working with a married man or a married woman or married whoever. I think that's like how I think of professionalism. But in terms of like how we show up, I think that they're just like you said earlier, like the companies that are able to create safe environments where people feel like they belong. It's called DEIB for a reason, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The people that focused on belonging are going to be the organizations that win in the long run.
And as much as we think it starts at the bottom, it starts at the top too. I think it starts at the top, like so much more, like at leadership, like look at your boss. Like, are they someone that promotes what we're talking about? Do you feel confident and comfortable with that person? And then like, if you continue to like, I want to hear the leader of my company talk about this stuff, which thankfully Sam and I work at a company that does, and they value that. And I'm like, wow, I'm very appreciative to be able to be in a place that values the importance of that, because I know that there's other places that don't. But with that, I need to ask the question on imposter syndrome. What happened when you guys first met? Sam's telling you he's got imposter syndrome. I'm like, bullshit. He didn't have any imposter syndrome. What happened here?
It was basically a therapy session. Sam.
Oh, wow. Sounds like Sam.
I'm still waiting to send him the invoice because
send me my bill. It's fine.
I don't know. Basically,
we were talking.
We were talking about imposter syndrome. Like, he used the word in relation to himself, and then I was like, hold up, like, wait a minute, because I'm very familiar with the concept, intimately so. But about 2 years ago, almost, when I took my job at my current company, I became the director of growth and marketing at 22 years old. And it was really intimidating. Like, imagine literally being asked to be the director of growth and marketing, or like come up with your own title, like whatever, at a company at 22 years old. Like, that's crazy. So immediately I was like, imposter syndrome kicks in, and I'm like, how am I supposed to show up? Like, I can't even get over this imposter syndrome that I'm dealing with. And the first thing I did was I invested in a mindset coach, which I want to say, side note, it is never too early to invest in yourself, because once you have your mind, like mental fortitude, once you have your mind figured out, it serves you and only continues to compound over time. And so when I started with this mindset coach, what she said to me was, within 3 months, you're going to feel a lot more confident. And within 6 months, you're going to be a completely different person. And I worked with her for a year, and it's so true. And so what she said to me about imposter syndrome was, when you use the word imposter, whether it's in relation to yourself or you just say it, your subconscious hears that. And even if you're trying to get over it, by calling it imposter syndrome, your subconscious takes it as, oh, I'm an imposter. And then you start to believe the thing that can't be unlearned. And then she said, instead, what it is, let's call it what it is, it's a weakness in confidence. When you feel like you're an imposter, you just are experiencing a weakness in confidence. And so instead of naming it something that is inaccessible, right, you can't become a non-imposter, you call it something that's accessible to be able to strengthen, right? So when you feel a weakness in confidence come on, when you're in a meeting and you get nervous and your hands are shaking, you say, okay, I'm noticing this feeling. It's a weakness in confidence. Call it what it is. And then say, practice confidence. And how do you practice confidence? You hype yourself up. You write daily affirmations. You look in the mirror and you do the superwoman pose. Like, whatever you have to do, whatever the things are, like, that you know make you feel confident, do those things. And it's not a prescription. It's not I can't tell you what's going to make you feel confident, but it's up to you to find out what that is. And so that's the whole imposter syndrome, self-confidence thing that for me has literally been life-changing. Because when I hear other people use that word now, A, I correct them or I offer my advice. But B, I just see right through it. Like it's a weakness in confidence is what they are experiencing. So that enables me to then show up for them in the way that they need, which might mean hyping them up, which might mean telling them I love their outfit, which might mean telling them they look radiant, and it just lets me become and show up as my authentic self.
And so I'm so glad we kind of told the whole story, because I loved when you did that. And I want to tell you, Danielle, obviously it was the first time we met, we were chatting. You probably didn't think it had a big impact on me, but it did. I started to take a second, not just with the phrase imposter syndrome, but with a lot of the negative self-talk that I did without even noticing it. And so every time I'm saying like my bad or my fault or I messed up or I'm dumb, that's on me, right? Like in work, at the gym, with my friends, whatever it is, I'm not perfect yet. but I'm starting to try to catch myself and be like, don't even put that in the universe. Like, you don't need to put that in the universe. There are other ways to say what you're trying to say. You're a human being. You're allowed to mess up, but you don't need to be negative to yourself. And so I'm making a conscious effort now because of what you told me. So thank you, to be a little bit more positive. And I think that's, I mean, again, just starting out, but it's good to be positive because your mind hears these things, to your point, and it internalizes them. Go ahead, Parker.
I was going to say to the idea of imposter syndrome, like, I think sometimes I think like so binary about a situation. Like, if I'm not doing well at this presentation, I'm doing terrible, you know? And I know what good feels like, but I know what terrible feels like too. And I think often I approach a situation with like, if it's not good, it's bad. And that's not necessarily ever the case. There's a spectrum, and you might not be like perfect, but you might be, you know, great, good, excellent. Maybe it was okay, but that's fine. And I think like when I approach the term of imposter syndrome, I feel like things are going pretty whatever. It's like I need to get out of the idea that like if it's not great, it's not bad, right? There's a middle ground there. And then also one other thing with imposter syndrome is like you're at the damn table for a reason. You're in the damn room for a reason. Own it. Like, why not? You mess up, great. Like, you're there for a reason. Someone's paying you there because you deserve to be there. Until, I guess, you don't deserve to be there. But that goes against my whole point. Sorry.
Yeah. No. It's a great point too, because it's like, I even experience it, right? It's like someone reached out to me to attend an HR conference a couple weeks ago. Now, whether or not I go is sort of irrelevant to the story, but then there's another HR conference in July that I want to go to really bad. And today someone hit me up about it and was like, are you going to this? And I was like, no, but it looks really cool. Like, and I'm, you know, I know how that sounds. HR conference sounds, you know, looks really cool. Does not sound very cool. But like, there's an outdoor fair. Like, who doesn't love that, right? Unconventional conferences. So I'm like, should I hit up the organizers? Of course I should hit up the organizers. Because even though they didn't ask me to be a part of the conference or to come for free or whatever, I know that I can get asked that someone out there in the ether is willing to offer me a free ticket to a conference and to comp my hotel room. So I think like how we show up in like one area, this is something I'm learning right now, is like how I show up, how people respect me, and how people see me as this influencer and to the level of success that I've achieved thus far will take me places that I don't necessarily think I didn't think I could go, but really could be applying myself to be able to get to the next level of success. Because once I go to the conference and they meet me in person, they're going to want me to speak. So that's how I'm manifesting my future.
Elevating.
I love it.
You're elevating. That's what it's all about.
It's spot on, though. And that was the last point I wanted to say with imposter syndrome, too, Danielle. And thank you for sharing that. Is like, I'm not going to use the word, but for the sake of the story, I want to feel like an imposter in terms of I'm pushing myself to be in rooms that maybe I didn't think I should be in yet. Just like this conference, right? I'm confident that once these people meet me, I'm at the conference, I'm in the room, I'm surrounded by smart people like yourself, right? Like, if I'm always confident in the smartest person and know that I'm the shit in every single room that I'm in, I'm not surrounding myself with people that are helping me elevate and grow. And so that feeling of imposter syndrome or weakness in confidence, I want to start to feel that, because that means I'm challenging myself to elevate and become the best version of myself. If I'm always complacent and always 100% confident, I think I will have plateaued. And that goes against our podcast name.
No, that's a good point. It's tough. It's like you never want to be the smartest person in the room, as cliche as it is. Like, you really don't. But then if you're like the dumbest person in the room and you feel that, you're like, That doesn't feel too good.
Yeah. I think it's about like finding a happy medium of like always believing that you have something to learn and also being confident in your presence.
It's mental fortitude. You're confident in who you are.
And authentic.
Yeah.
Confident doesn't mean like you being cocky and pretending you have all the answers. Confident in knowing who you are, self-awareness, vision, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. You don't have to, confidence is not like, I just want to clarify to the people out there listening. We're not saying go into these meetings thinking you're hot shit. Like, go in.
Yeah.
No,
Sam goes into the meetings thinking he's hot shit for sure.
You're a liar.
We're speaking in Chicago a few months ago. Sam's walking up like, this is going to be so great. Meanwhile, I'm like sweating my palms. I'm like, dude, I'm like nervous as anything. He's like, we got this, man. It goes well. Like, it went great. It's just like Sam's got something that, very few have. He loves to public speak. And I'm on the opposite end. I'm like, I like public speaking, but it takes a little bit to get warmed up.
Once I'm there,
yeah, like
fine.
I black out. I don't even remember what I say.
Yeah.
My thing is like, I told Sam the night before, I said, do this for me. Like, you can introduce, I need the first word. I need to hear my voice because this is going to get me going. Like, let me just say hi and then you can go. Just let me say the first word and then it will be helpful. And we did it. I said, hello, welcome. And then Sam went, and then I went. I'm like, boom.
There you go. We were confident.
That's cute.
I love it.
That's cute. You guys are a duo. It's adorable.
We're a cute little duo. We make it work. That's what happens when you run a company and speak around the world with your best friend. You gotta balance each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it's been a blast. But Danielle, we're gonna have to do this again in person. I now want to come to HR conferences with you and Parker. That sounds like a blast. Like, just incredible stuff. I want to make sure that we get to a couple more questions really quick. We have a section called our rapid fire segment. So I have a couple questions that I want to ask you. First answer pops into your mind. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. As a digital nomad, someone with work-life balance, traveling around the world, I see you working in cars all the time. Where's your favorite place, specific here, city, actual location that you've ever worked remotely from?
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I went to WeWork in New York City, in Times Square. I know this sounds horrible so far, but there was this room that was facing Broadway, and it was like super sunny, the sun streaming in, like I was getting a tan, and I was sitting in the corner, like with my laptop, just like facing this gorgeous view of Broadway. Who doesn't love that? And I got so much done that day. Plus, I was surrounded by some of my best friends. And it was like one of the most productive times of my life. So New York City is the best place in the world. I'm not going to stray from that opinion ever. But yeah, that is probably like anywhere too that's just like in the sunlight, near a window with a view is, I'm getting so much shit done.
I love New York too. That makes two of us in this room, not three. Everyone knows that if you've been along the journey, Elevation Nation, Sam is not a big fan, unfortunately. That's why we can't do these together.
Yikes.
But, all right, next rapid fire question. Danielle, you're a future of work wizard. You're all about the future of work. What is a trend that you're seeing that you're super pumped about in the future of work?
Yeah. So by 2030, a large portion, I can't remember the exact number. I'm not going to make up numbers here, but a lot of people by 2030 will be solopreneurs. They'll be contractors. They'll be working for themselves. They'll be working maybe on multiple projects. And I think with that, a lot of co-working spaces that are more niche to a specific skill are going to come to fruition. So I'm already seeing it with like obviously there's WeWork, so like that's the sort of the birth of co-working, but there's ones for engineers, there's co-working for women, there's co-working for designers and like founders and all these different people. And I'm really excited about that. Just like this co-located workspace kind of community center that will, I think, be really big for just like the emergence of stronger communities. Because we spend so much of our lives at work. And realistically, if fewer of us are actually going to an office, then creating these second or third spaces will be really crucial to like our productivity and our mental health and well-being. And it's going to start to feed into other parts of our lives. So I'm really excited to see that, the progression of that, and to see people connect in person and be able to like be surrounded by other people they can learn with as well and learn from. So yeah, that's something that totally hypes me up.
Sounds like we got to make an Elevation Nation co-working space, Sam.
1,000%.
I'm down.
That's actually sounds like a fun idea, Jasmine.
I mean, we have like, I think a few of Danielle's good friends already in Elevation Nation, so I feel like it'd just be one big productive party.
It would be like an elevated place, man. Like a lot of like cool elevated
God, you're
people.
cheesy. You're the cheesiest kid I've ever met.
Just saying. It would be like, we'd have to have like a lot of elevators, actual elevators in the co-working
All right,
space.
you're not designing this place right now. I refuse to let this happen.
Definitely.
But I like how you're dreaming
big.
big. Danielle, our final rapid fire for you. Parker and I love to read. We love books. Do you have a book recommendation for us that we can add to our list?
I actually do. I was reading it yesterday. It's meant to be read slow, so don't rush through it. It's called Hell Yes, or Hell Yeah, or Hell No. I'm reading it. Wait. Hell Yeah or Hell No.
Okay.
And it's by Dan Sivers. I think that's his name.
I'm looking it up right now.
He's amazing. And every page, it's sort of like one of those books where you can flip to any page and read it. I really like that style of writing because I have ADHD and like it's hard for me to keep reading like one book. So it's very helpful for my brain. And I also use a journal and I journal alongside it, which is awesome because I love journaling and I love reading. And I'm like, sometimes I just want to do a bit of both. So fantastic book.
Love it. Add it to the list. This
I already
is like
bought it.
Parker's rubbing off on me in
Just
Elevation
now.
Nation.
Like just now. It's already order placed. Boom. It's coming to the bookshelf.
Oh my God. Tell me what you think.
Can't
Dangerous
wait.
how many books we have on our list now.
So we've only done like 225 podcasts. Imagine how many books that is.
We got a lot
Only.
of good recs.
Yeah. That's so funny. Sam, what were you going to say?
That I have. You're rubbing off on me. So I usually read like one book at a time. I'm very like, I have 4, right? Parker reads like 12 books at a time. I have 4 going right now. I'm struggling a little bit. I'm not going to lie, but I'm enjoying all of them. So I don't really want to like stop. It's kind of based on my mood before I go to bed.
Boom. That's what it is, man. Like, so you get the vibe on the airplane. You don't want to read about like personal development. You want to get lost in a story. So I got a book for that. Got a book for finances because I'm interested in learning how I can, maintain my personal finances, whatever it is. Like, that's a book you can bounce between. This new book, Danielle, I'm like, all right, sweet. I'll read
slow.
2 pages and then put it down and then read another 2 pages in a month. Why not?
I love that.
All right, Danielle, last question. I know it's tired. I'm tired. It's been a long day.
It's tired.
But it's tired. Yeah, the microphone is tired. But this is the most important question that we ask every single person we welcome to Elevation Nation. It is very meaningful to Sam and myself, and that is around the idea of a mental motto. And we think the mental motto is a phrase or term that you live your life by. It's the thing that you can always revert to when times are good, when times are bad, and the thing that adds that extra light of direction as you trying to elevate yourself in the real world. Sam's wearing his mental motto on his shirt, but we don't care about Sam's mental motto right now. Danielle, what is your mental motto?
Jeez, Sam's is pretty good, not gonna lie. My mental motto that I usually refer back to is everything happens for the best reason. And the reason why I say best reason instead of whatever else people say is because it doesn't let your mind wander to whatever the other reason could be, right? Everything happens for a reason. Then you let your mind wander, like your subconscious, right? We talked about our subconscious before. And you're kind of left wondering. But when you say everything happens for the best reason, it leaves this internal knowing that everything actually does happen for the best reason. And that reason that it happened is the best. So it's kind of just like this thing of like trusting in the universe, trusting, I'm a little bit Kabbalistic. I like my Kabbalah. I like trusting in the universe and all that, and receiving signs and stuff like that. But I think it just helps me when I'm feeling lost, because I know that when I feel lost, then something good will come out of that, and it'll be for the best reason in the end.
I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. The Kabbalah has a lot of interesting teachings in it. I got this necklace in Sfat, so we learned all about it. Yeah, it's cool. And it's funny, Parker and I were going to have this debate on the topic of everything happens for a reason, so we might have to bring you back to talk about it, because this might start some Twitter wars within this friend group right here. And I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that when we have more time. But I think it's a beautiful mental motto and something that really just can remind you, as it sounds like we both are going through quarter life crises, of like, hey, take a deep breath, chill out. It's all going to navigate some way, and it's going to be for the best. It's going to be for a good reason. And so I love that. We'll put it on a shirt. Why not?
I'm down.
Well, Danielle, it's been 55 minutes. And all I got to say is it's been amazing chatting about HR stuff, people stuff, future of work. But more importantly, it's really freaking cool to hear how you're elevating yourself in the real world, your mindset, the way you activate mental fortitude in your life. And it's inspiring to myself as, I'm trying to do the same. And so it's just cool to hear from your stories, and I'm excited to see all the amazing things that you're going to be doing, not just this year, but down the road. We got a lot of elevating to do, don't we?
The world needs a lot of it, so we're here, showing up.
Yes, we are. Danielle, thank you. This was special. Elevation Nation, until next week. Peace.
Bye.